the opening of Sibelius's Fifth Symphony, music by a Finn, conducted there by a Finn, Esa-Pekka Salonen, with his orchestra, the San Francisco Symphony. A recording available exclusively on Apple Music, along with others by Respighi, Ligeti and Anders Hilburg. I'm James Jolly and welcome to this Gramophone podcast. I travelled to California in November to talk to Salonen about the inaugural California Festival, of which he is one of the triumvirate, along with Gustavo Dudamel and Rafael Payare, that has helped bring the hugely ambitious musical celebration into being. Needless to say, we also discussed Salonen's other role as composer, his feelings about recording and how technology, one of the major drivers of progress in this part of the States, has changed his attitude to music and music making.
So I think just to give a bit of context, here we are, we're sitting in the conductor's room, green room, in Davies Symphony Hall in San Francisco. You have just conducted a fantastic programme, your own Kinema, a new piece by Jens Ibsen, and then Stravinsky Symphony in 3 movements. It's quite a treat to have 2 modern works in a single programme.
Well, that's the particular thing about the California Festival, of course, that the only brief we gave to the participants was to include works that, or at least one work, which is less than five years old. And in this case,
You got 2?
We got 2, because Jens also won the Emerging Black Composer competition that is being organized by the conservatory here, and I was one of the jurors, and I chose him. He wrote this for us particularly, specifically for the symphony. And of course Stravinsky, I thought, 3 California composers, adopted California composers. Jens is actually a native, so he's a real California composer, but I live here, and so did Stravinsky.
I was quite struck because you introduced your piece and right at the start you pointed out this was part of the California Festival, and you said this could only happen in California, and I absolutely agree with you. But why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's not like one single thing. It's lots of things. But I think that one of the motivations here is that California has too long been seen as the sort of cultural backwater in terms of the high arts and so on, and California is known for its car culture, its beaches, beach boys, etc., and obviously the entertainment industry, and now this part of California for the tech. But there has been a bit of a stigma over the arts, traditional arts in this state, and especially the East Coast has been looking at California as a bunch of kids, basically. They're sweet, but they're kind of naive and so on. So I think there's partly a feeling here that, okay, let's show them what we can do. And also, I think we made the right decision not to have any kind of a centralized leadership, so that every organization really felt welcome and not judged, but just like welcomed and in a sort of a very inclusive way. And that's also typical of California, this kind of approach to things. And so many people from various parts of the world and different parts of this country have come to this state and kind of found themselves. Not only musicians, but also musicians, obviously. So if you ask John Adams, he would say that he would not be the composer we know today if he had stayed on the East Coast. People like Peter Sellers, Bill Viola, lots of people somehow felt that coming to California allows them become the person, the artist they should have become, somehow what is in their DNA. California doesn't tell you what to do. I have this memory myself when I came here in my distant youth to work with the LA Philharmonic, and I was armed with the sort of typical European cultural canon kind of thing, the ever so slightly arrogant, and also Shakespeare is the greatest dramatist, and Beethoven is the greatest symphonic composer, and Bach is the greatest this and that, and we have Nietzsche, we have Schopenhauer, we have Schiller, Michelangelo, we have everything. So what do you have? Cars and Muscle Beach. And everybody was very sort of, oh, that's great, yeah, great, but what am I supposed to feel? And I was very annoyed because this was not the question that was being asked in my circles, like the modernist post-serial crowd. And I was like, feel, okay, that's a concept. But it did help me so much, because all of a sudden I realized that this is not, despite the fact that I happen to be European, it doesn't make me any different in terms of the value of my ideas. And here you can't hide behind some kind of a semi-intellectual, cultural smokescreen. So here you are what you do.
I also get the sense, having talked to an awful lot of people actually over the last few days, is that one of the things that people say is very special about California is it's not mired in tradition. People aren't looking behind them, they're looking around them, they're looking ahead. But actually they don't really care what happened behind. If you look at the programme from a lot of this festival, it's sort of organic. It comes out of the soil. It comes out of what's happening around. There's no kind of, oh, I want to put this piece in because I know my professor at the conservatoire will, kind of give me a sort of tick for that. It's because actually that's what I want to do.
Well, that's the whole point with this festival. When we started discussing the actual structure of it, I mean, the idea of doing something festival-like is an old one. So,
but not on this scale, because
not on this scale, no. But
because if you take California and you lay it over a map of Europe, it would cover the whole of Germany, Switzerland, and quite a large chunk of Austria.
I know, yeah, absolutely. But I've been discussing this with friends and colleagues for at least 10 years that we should do something. But finally, it was just pre-pandemic. We had this meeting in LA with Gustavo and the LA Philharmonic people and my people here, and we started to kind of form this idea of a festival that is basically a forum. It's a bit like Uber. You have the independent drivers, but then there's this kind of app that connects everything together. And as you said, it's because it's open, there doesn't have to be any kind of socio-cultural or any other justification for the program, anything but other than I happen to like this piece. And we played it last year and it was a great success, so we played again, that kind of thing. And in a way, this kind of structure gives us a sort of a snapshot of what's going on. And I think, when a program is being selected based on the pleasure principle rather than some kind of quota.
Because that's the other thing it seemed to avoid, is it was not a box-ticking exercise, which so much music, I feel, post, Me Too, post Black Lives Matter, post-pandemic, people suddenly, we've got to have this, we've got to have this. And actually that doesn't feel like that. But actually the end result is much more genuine and more or less ticks the boxes without actually actively ticking the boxes.
Yeah, because the only criteria here, apart from the 5-year limit, is that somebody likes it. So that automatically opens it up for diversity, because people like different things. And also, I mean, this diversity thing, it is a real problem, obviously. Nobody can deny it. But to me, the idea of trying to solve it by quota, 17% of all the new music in programs should be composed by women or something like that. It's artificial, and actually it devalues.
Yes, it's insulting, ultimately.
Yeah, and I have had conversations with many female composers, for instance, and young ones and older ones, who really find it very hurtful to be chosen because of their gender, and especially if the composer belongs to more minorities than just gender or underrepresented groups, then it becomes sort of there's almost like paranoia.
Which box is being ticked?
Yeah, why am I being played by these people? And when the principle is just simple, we like it, then it kind of takes all that away. But I'm not trying to say that there wouldn't be a problem, and I'm not trying to say that there would be simple solutions to this problem, but this is one of them.
But I mean, it was lovely to see the response. I mean, here we are on a Sunday afternoon to have 2 contemporary pieces of music, and people were standing up, giving an ovation after the new music, which is kind of rare, but actually very gratifying.
Well, that's the thing about California that you mentioned, that there is no hierarchy in the same way there is, say, in Germany, where there's Musik, which is like German music, and then there's other types of music, and it's, if you want to prove yourself as a performer or a conductor or something like that, it has to be Brahms or Beethoven or maybe Bruckner. but it can't be Stravinsky or Debussy or Sibelius, for God's sake. And there's always this kind of idea of the giants being somewhere and you have to carry the weight of them on your shoulders, whatever you do. There's none of that here. So most likely that reflects itself in the way the audiences behave. Because for them, if they hear a great Beethoven performance, they're also enthusiastic. But if they hear a new piece that they like, then they show it.
We could talk about, your transformative period in Los Angeles, but actually I'm kind of more interested in that you arrived here after Michael Tilson Thomas, who'd been doing a kind of similar amount of work, or similar sort of work to what you'd been doing in Los Angeles. I mean, what's it like to, as it were, inherit an orchestra, or more important, an audience that he had cultivated?
It was a big factor, actually, when the orchestra started talking to me about the possible succession of Michael. Because I thought, okay, it wouldn't be like a dramatic change for culture, for me or for the orchestra. Because as you said, Michael has been doing all kinds of things that outside the box since the very beginning here. And also because there was this, I wouldn't say rivalry, but like people were looking at the LA Philharmonic and the San Francisco Symphony and seeing who was doing what. And Michael did these American Mavericks festivals and actually bringing out repertoire that was not played at all. And I was doing different kinds of things. But deep down, we both felt that we are doing the same thing. And Michael is a friend, and I was a big fan of his already when I was a student. And then, of course, my conducting career got going because
I was going to say
his cancellation.
Yes,
and this it was actually quite funny, when
this was Philharmonia Mahler 3.
It was Philharmonia Mahler 3, yeah, and it was Michael. He had this arm or something, and when I was announced here, so he called me and said, "Well, it's like a full circle now, right?" So that felt completely organic, and then the pandemic happened, and Michael's last season didn't happen, my first season didn't happen, and the audience is back, but not to 100%. So I think we lost a segment of older people who are not comfortable coming to public situations, maybe ever anymore. So there's still a bit of work to do in terms of getting the audience back. But also what happened was that the average age of the audience has gone down because the kids don't seem to worry about the viruses so much. And that's a good sign. And also it's fun for us to see younger faces and feel the energy.
I mean, a lot of people assume that, a conductor basically just goes to an orchestra and then sort of says, right, this is the music we're going to do. But there must be an element if you come here to San Francisco and suddenly think, well, actually, what does the place and what does the orchestra prompt me to look at that I might not have done had I not ended up, say, in San Francisco? I mean, are there sort of doors that have opened for you here that you perhaps before wouldn't have opened?
I'm actually studying a lot of new scores all the time, partly because of the contemporary music I'm commissioning and premiering and so on. So in many ways I feel like a young conductor, except that I feel like an old conductor in the sense that I don't learn as quickly as I did as a young person. And that I quite like that. It's sometimes a lot of work, but I like the fact that I have to keep my brain going. And also I have taken up some repertoire, like a standard repertoire pieces that I have never conducted before, such as the Busoni piano concerto, not standard rep, but you know what I mean, and the Alpine Symphony we played a few weeks ago, which I used to hate deeply when I was a young angry man.
The one recording that's just come out, which I have to say I would have never put you down as a Respighi Pines of Rome kind of conductor.
Well,
does that appeal to Esa-Pekka the conductor or Esa-Pekka the composer?
Difficult to say, but as I'm getting older, I'm more and more, let's put it this way, I'm less and less ideological about what I conduct and what I like and what I don't like. And Pines of Rome or the Alpine Symphony, obviously they're not great compositions in terms of the depth of the message and especially in the case of Respighi, the sort of organic musical form was not his thing. It's more episodic and so on. but I like the noise it makes. Like Olli Nassen used to say, that was remarkable noise, and which was in his books it was high praise. And
And he used to have a few indulgent pieces. I mean, he used to like, the Ravel Mussorgsky pictures
Oh,
of the
yeah,
exhibition. So.
Oh, he had lots of secret closet loves, and he would always say that, oh, that was naughty. And boy, I miss him. Like we all do.
How's the sort of recording side of things? Because I noticed Apple have been putting out various recordings. I mean, what's sort of going on behind the scenes there?
It's a discourse that is ongoing, because I felt during the pandemic that CD is dead. That was my feeling. I mean, I have lots of them and I have LPs and stuff, but I don't have a CD player. And my kids have never been to a record store in their lives, and everything is just streamed and downloadable. And so I thought maybe this idea of a symphonic organization having its own record label and putting out CDs is an old-fashioned idea, but I'm not so sure about that now. The technical format of streaming has improved a lot, even in the last 3 years or so. I mean, the best quality that you get out of Apple now, for instance, is pretty damn good. If you don't know you are listening to a stream, sometimes you won't even notice. You can hear it if you listen to piano music or something like that. And I also like the way that they can code the stream differently, so they can code it for the Dolby Atmos, like 360 and so on. And 360 sound is something that really interests me, because it can be super powerful, and also it gives you a totally different perspective to an orchestra, for instance, especially if you're listening to very sort of dense, complex works. To have a 360 oral field, it sort of clarifies things, and it's almost like an X-ray. So I like those possibilities. We actually recorded a couple of Ligeti pieces during the lockdown, because I was trying to figure out what we could do that would benefit from every person being recorded separately. And I thought Ligeti Lux Aeterna is one of those pieces, because if you have everybody on a separate stem, then you can really use the 360 mix. And we did that, and we recorded Clocks and Clouds as well, and Ramification. That really is fascinating, especially it looks like them now when you hear it with the Dolby Atmos system, or with Apple headphones, the newer ones that can do the 360. It really is quite magical. I wasn't so keen on the idea of re-recording the classics again, but now if we can use this technology, then it actually makes sense to record a Brahms piece or a Strauss.
I thought the Sibelius 5 that's come out on Apple, actually that sounds gorgeous.
There's a lot that can be done now, even with, I wouldn't say consumer level technology, but almost. So it doesn't have to be like the one and only 1-bit recorder from Sony Labs. It's like sort of standard stuff. And also because people's listening habits have changed radically. Most people use their headphones when they listen to music. The sort of hi-fi, 2 massive loudspeakers and a vacuum tube amplifier. It's kind of rare. There are those people still, but it's mostly good quality headphones. And I think one should kind of make these recordings to mix them so that they would work best in headphones. That would make sense.
What is the role, do you think, of a recording for an orchestra? I mean, I always feel that orchestras that record, it somehow keeps them in very good health because they can hear what they sound like. I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about studio recordings, but the opportunity to hear themselves performing to their best, that must have a beneficial effect.
I'm sure it does. I'm certain of that. It's an objective reference. You are no better than what you do on the recording, including conductor, of course. So it's very healthy. But also, I felt that the orchestra's internal health, it cannot be the only reason to make recordings. Like touring also, it's good for orchestras, of course, to be on tour because you can concentrate on what you do without the sort of everyday life distractions. So you don't have to take your cat to the vet and you can just concentrate on what you're doing. So it's definitely part of it, but it cannot be, it doesn't justify traveling around the world on airplanes, polluting the atmosphere. So there must be like a deeper meaning in all this. And I think that if by recording we can shed new light on even on the very familiar works by using technology.
I was going to say, as a composer, I mean, you must have been inspired by technology to do things in music that before you thought, God, I didn't even know you could do that, or I didn't know that sound would.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can do things on a computer that would take months, if not years, manually. Various processes. And, I keep my harmonic repository on a cloud, thousands of files with various harmonic solutions and so on. And processing those things on a computer is, sometimes I come up with sounds and combinations that I wouldn't have been able to imagine. But the machine just does it because it's like objective. So that for sure. And also something that really interests me is the sort of simple digital enhancement of solo instruments, like looping, for instance, because it's very easy to do and not hugely expensive or complicated or anything, but it can be very effective. So these kind of things do interest me. Not in any way as replacements, but enhancements. And of course, if you think of the digital aspect in terms of what we do, the classical music, bad word, but Western art music, say. So it's a three-pronged thing. So A, we can use the new technology in terms of distribution. So that's like the simple part of it. Then we can kind of repurpose or reimagine existing repertoire with digital enhancements, whatever they are, visual, audio, haptic, whatever. And then the third one is that we can also create bespoke material for the digital medium, which is possibly the most exciting option prospect here, but there's nothing much happening within that realm yet. Next week I'm going to Cupertino to test the new AR VR kit. I have to go there. They won't let it out outside the campus, so I'm going to test it. One of the lockdown things I saw in London was the Currents Rising, the Royal Opera House with Nisha Jones and the team. That was the first time when I felt that VR classical music piece can be deeply emotionally affecting. Because usually, up to that point, it was like, oh wow, you can do that. You can walk through a tree trunk or something. And so that's amazing, but essentially empty, because beyond that, there's no meaning. But here, I was really affected by it. But I walked out of there and I thought, okay, this proves that the medium can be very powerful. And we should really try to create some content in that realm.
And you're in the best place, really, aren't you?
Well, basically, yes. I mean, it's all happening around the corner, like within a 45-minute drive.
Now, I just want to ask you about one piece of music that also has appeared on it, the Anders Hillborg Kongsgård variations, which I'm really taken with. It's a really gorgeous piece.
It is. It is, yeah. Yeah, Anders is now becoming almost like a household name here. He's one of my favorite composers alive, and an old friend also. So we're playing a lot of his stuff, and we just premiered his second piano concerto with Maniacs, and he has found the sort of holy grail thing where he writes music that is instantly appealing, but not simple, or not simplistic, and not naive. So there's the sort of complexity when needed, and simplicity when needed. And it's a bit like, when Mozart finished that amazing quintet for winds and piano, he wrote to Leopold and said that I've finally written a piece that will delight the amateurs and give something to the connoisseurs. And that's a very good line, because ideally, a great piece of music does that. So Anders is able to do this.
Part of the Kong School Variations by Anders Hillborg, another San Francisco Symphony recording available from Apple Music. It was conducted by our guest this week, Esa-Pekka Salonen. Gramophone podcasts are free, but if you enjoy them, then a really great way to support our work is to take out a subscription to Gramophone magazine. Over 13 issues a year, we bring you hundreds of reviews by our expert critics, as well as in-depth articles about the latest classical music releases and the most exciting musicians of the day. And if you head over to gramophone.co.uk/subscribe and enter the code podcast20 in the checkout, you can even get a 20% discount off any subscription package. We really value your support, and consider leaving a review or rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And do look out for another Gramophone podcast very soon.